Yo, being fans of anime, and if you're watching this video, I'm assuming you're a fan of anime, you become aware of a number of tropes in the medium. You know, common themes and story beats that just seem to appear in every anime, like characters' parents dying, or the main character having hidden latent abilities, or his dad being the strongest person in the world for some reason, or stuff like, you know, the pervy character nosebleeds. I don't know who came up with that one.
Out of pocket for that shit.
But out of all of them, my favorite trope has to be when there's just a group of strong niggas, and they all just rolling together, just strong as for no reason. But not just strong as in powerful, but also strong as in having a strong bond and a strong vision. And I think that becomes even more interesting when a dark twist is involved. And that is why I love villain groups in anime. You know, originally this video was gonna be about all anime groups, but the Straw Hats would have just ran away with that one, so honestly, the Straw Hats need a whole video in themselves, but I'm getting off track. As opposed to protagonist groups, villain groups are much more complicated and I think harder to write, because they have to have that cool evil factor while also being compelling as a character, and a lot of times you want to add a little bit of sympathy to them, and I think that's a hard thing to balance when you're making a villain group. Like, some groups are really cool, like they got the cool factor down, but when it comes to the soul of some of the characters, some of them are lacking. Like, that's what groups like the Espada are to me. And don't get me wrong, I like the Espada. I just think the Stern Ridders were better. But this isn't the Bleach video. I'm not gonna get into it. And it's crazy because I really wanted to like the Espada more than the Stern Ridders, because they're a way cooler concept. And I think one thing they do really well as a group that every villain group aims to do is they do a really good job of paralleling the protagonist in the arc. Like the way that the Espada parallel the Visored Soul Reapers, and the way that in general they parallel the Court Guards. I think that aspect of them was really well done. And it's important for villain groups to do this because it gives a sense of depth to the characters. But I'll be honest, with the Espada, the parallels felt superficial at best, except for the scientist fight with Mayuri, and however you pronounce that nigga's name. And that's what makes the Espada so disappointing to me, because they had such great character designs and interesting traits. Like, we have some instances of great characters like Stark and the time death guy, but for every character like that, we have characters like Ulquiorra and Grimmjow, who I thought were super interesting, but we just didn't dive into them enough. Especially Ulquiorra, because they hinted at so much depth with his character, but we just never dive into it, really up until when he's about to die, and I just feel like it left so much potential on the table. But one thing that I loved about the Espada was their common connection to Aizen, and their almost blind devotion to him, because that created a common vision gelling them together, which is something that groups like the Akatsuki lack. And it sucks because out of all the groups, the Akatsuki had the coolest designs and the hardest fists. Them niggas had drip, I ain't gonna lie. And they was low-key on to something with the whole duos thing, and the duos having contrasting views like Sasori and Datara's relationship. They was on to something with that. But that's about where my compliments end, because ultimately the Akatsuki end up feeling all over the place and like they have no consistent vision or really anything pulling them together, which can work, but I don't think a lot of the members are interesting enough individually to make that work. And it ends up feeling more like a random assortment of characters than a consolidated group. And there are so many twists and turns and subversions with the group that ultimately the group ends up feeling pointless outside of characters like Itachi and Pain. And there were some good characters there, but a good villain group is greater than the sum of its parts. And that's something that I just think the Akatsuki completely fails at, whereas a group like the League of Villains accomplishes perfectly. That's why he's the GOAT! Obviously, it has individually interesting characters like Shigaraki and Dabi and Twice, but their genuine care for each other ends up setting them apart. Because as you see the group expand and the characters grow and their relationships change and develop, they start to feel more, to me, more dynamic than the Akatsuki ever felt. To the point where there are certain parts of the story where you low-key start rooting for them. Because it's like, I've seen these niggas grow just as much as I've seen the protagonists grow. And then the League of Villains has Shigaraki, who's just better than any villain Naruto's ever had, so
he glazing, look, he glazing.
But one thing that the League of Villains and the Akatsuki do that I wish the Espada did is that they end up being really good commentaries and showing of the failures of the societies that they live in, with the Akatsuki showing how the politics of the warring states and whatnot ends up ostracizing certain people and forcing them basically into a life of crime, and with the League of Villains showing how some quirks are stigmatized and how the structure of the hero society itself sometimes allows people to fall through the cracks, and how that creates the villains in the world world. And I just love when villain groups expose the flaws in society, and no group does that better than the Phantom Troupe. I'll be honest, I think the Phantom Troupe is the perfect villain group. The best villain group in anime and manga, hands down.
Look, shaboing boing, get the dick out your mouth, dummy.
And reason number one is Pakunoda, you feel me? But no, seriously, the Phantom Troupe has great, interesting characters and great dynamics between them, which is what I was talking about earlier when I mentioned the group being greater than the sum of its parts thing. But I specifically love what Hunter x Hunter does with the Phantom Troupe because it makes them almost enigmatic characters. And they do this by showing you major conflicts in their morality and what they consider to be right and wrong. I think my favorite specific example of this is when we see Uvo go on this crazy rampage. He killing niggas, crushing niggas' heads with other niggas' heads, biting niggas' faces off, and then when he's about to leave back out, he just kisses Sharnark on the forehead. Like, what is this group? What are they about? It leaves you with a sense of mystery as to what their motives are. And you only get more interested when Gon and Killua get kidnapped by these niggas, and you notice this consistent sense of apathy between them that they all share, even though they all know what they're doing is wrong. And because of these dynamics, the group feels alive. They feel like more than just 2D characters, and they almost get shown in a protagonistic light, and it makes you care about them in a way that's not typical to villains. Like, I usually care about the villain, but the Phantom Troupe, I damn near care about them more than the main characters, except Kurapika, that's my dog. Like, Pakunoda's death actually made me tear up just because of her dedication to the group, and I love the idea that they don't view any single member of being important. Well, they're not supposed to, but they're supposed to prioritize the whole. And how they end up betraying that because of how all of them view Chrollo as more important than all of them, even though Chrollo views himself as just as unimportant as everybody else. And manga spoilers, but finding out about their origin only makes them that much better. Like, they were already my top 1 villain group, but this just makes it so I don't think any other group will ever come close, ever. It just makes the present day so much sadder, knowing that they started out as this innocent group doing plays for their community, to the point where when bad things happen to them in the present day, I can't help but think about their child selves and what they would say about this. And finding out about the origins of their crimes creates this parallel between Chrollo and Kurapika that I'm sure we'll dive more into as the story goes forward, because they were both just these kind kids that were turned into killers because of their thirst for revenge. And then how the Phantom Troops dive into depravity is depicted, and how it starts out as them just putting up an act, but they start to lose themselves in it, and that starts to become who they are. They become the villain. And just the whole acting motif of Chrollo and Uvo, and how they both love to play the villain. That's when they were the happiest, that's when they were the best at acting, and now they get to play the villain all the time. Such great writing. But yeah, man, that's all I got for y'all boys today. Let me know what's your favorite anime villain group in the comments below. Like the video if you like the video. I know you like the video, because why would you still be watching if you didn't like the video? Subscribe to the channel, and yeah, man, I'm gone. Damn.